Hey, what's up guys? I'm really a little excited today. It's 30 degrees in the middle of the winter. It's late January, but I'm really excited because I just built a lure and I think this is going to be a cool lure in the springtime. I was going for a smaller Whopper Plopper and I kept trying with a couple different designs and ultimately I ended up landing on this. And I don't know if this is going to look good on the camera, but this is a kind of a photorealistic paint job of a bluegill, and it's by Jig Skins. That's the company. What I did was I took a Balsa Body, carved it up the way I wanted it, put a little bit of a flat spot under here so it would kind of push water as I reel it in, and put like a buzz blade, but I cut 2 of the 4 blades off the back. So I ended up with some number 8 Gamakatsu hooks. I've got the little buzz bait blade cut down to 2 blades. The reason I did that was because you can actually get a 4-blade spinnerbait blade that is smaller in length than a 2-blade. So I decided to try that. I'm really happy with the finish. The Jig Skins left me a couple open spots on my lure around my hook here and around the tip of the nose. But ultimately, I'm really happy with this lure, and I'm gonna take it over to the lake today, or the pond, and I'm gonna throw it in and just see how it travels through the water. Let's take a quick walk around on this lure and I'll explain to you what I did. But before I get into this lure, let me go get another body that I'm working on and I'll be back. Okay, as you guys know, the Whopper Plopper 90 is kind of the standard that I'm working off of in terms of just performance, the way it swims in the water, its ability to catch fish and attract fish. Now, I'm not so much concerned about emulating or recreating the plop, although I do think that's very important for this lure. I wanted something a lot more subtle that was, just a topwater lure that would make some disturbance as it was reeled in. So I like topwater on the move. So this was my first attempt, and I caught a fish on this. So this is basically a Balsa Body, and this Balsa Body I did not modify. I just basically ran a wire through the body of this lure, tied off the appropriate lengths, mounted the hooks, painted it, epoxied it, and put some eyes on it. Very basic design, and it works. The only problem is when you cast this lure, it tends to turn and cast in the direction of the weight, which is in the nose of this. So when that happens, it turns kind of with the line as it casts, and this thing turns and it acts kind of like a dart, like you would throw a dart in the air, and it can get tangled a little bit on the cast. So about every 4th or 5th cast, you get a line tangle, which is pretty frustrating. So that I thought, well, do I need all these blades, really? So that's when I came up with this design. And what I did different from the other design was I narrowed, let me see if I can get this better. I cut the body belly a little more narrow, but I left more of a keel in the form of a wire and the hook. So it still has the center weight in the bottom, but it's a smaller body, and I ramped underneath the chest here. So when it reels in, it kind of like lifts against the water as it reels in. And then I reduced it down to 2 blades on the back, which I still find makes just enough disturbance. But what's nice is when you cast this lure, I don't really get line tangle ever. It just does better than the other one. So, and I didn't really want to go through the pains of buying an airbrush and some paint gear and painting these things because I found, I'm impatient. I want to just get them in the water. So I ordered these things called Jig Skins, and they're shrink wrap tubes that you can put around old lures, new lures, whatever you're doing. And it gives it a good look. The only thing that happened on this one, you're supposed to cut it exactly the length of the lure where you want it to stop. But I did not account for the wraparound nose here, so I should have left more length and then just trimmed off the excess, because what happens is when it shrank around this lure, it drew back away from the nose. But you know, I can just dab a little epoxy around that, and I don't think your average garden variety bass is going to really have an issue with the lure not being perfect. But this one swims great, as you've just seen in the video, and it looks really good too. I'm quite pleased with this. I do think the line through is a little weak, and I'm not crazy about these split rings. I might size up on the split rings. So the next version of this, I'm going to do a little heavier line through. And then what I did with this center line was I took a wire and folded it over, and then I drilled a hole through the body of this to intersect with the line of this thing. So when I push this wire down through the lure, it actually hooked onto the other wire, so it won't come out. So you could pull on this as hard as you want on the bottom, and it's never going to pull out. I don't like, you know, the screw in eyes, because I'm always afraid they're going to get yanked out. And you know, I'm probably crediting these bass for being way stronger than they are, but I just like having a complete connected wire all the way through. One of the concerns with this wire through is that it's a little bit thin, and if I have wire or line connected to this lure directly and a bass is working it back and forth, you know, maybe it could, you know, sever or cut the line. But I don't think so. I mean, there's snap swivels that are smaller than this, so I think it would be fine. But I'll probably heavy up just a little bit, because all this stuff can handle it, and I don't think it'll hurt the buoyancy or the weight at all. But I really think this turned out looking good. And for giggles, I threw on a feather trailer. It gives a little bit more pullback on the hook to keep the hook out of the propeller, the prop, and it gives a little more weight, so when the lure sits in the water, it kind of sits down instead of sitting perfectly flat. It sits, you know, a little bit cocked like that. I think when a lure is sitting, if you have some hairs and some sparkle going on, you have increased propensity for a strike. So this works really well. You know, this might just be a design that you go with and you use. I think it'll catch fish for sure. But here's something that's pretty special that I'm working on that really looks cool. But I can't get this one to work. So basically, this is the Balsa Body. This is how I start. I line through, I get everything set up. This one I accidentally broke off the wire, which is why I'm going to heavier gauge wire. I usually have the wire for the keel connecting point for the hook straight through the body, and I was twisting on it trying to hook up the loop, and I snapped it. But I usually mount the weight up front right in the mouth. I create that flat spot so it kind of pushes through the water. But this one I liked because it had more of a proportionate look, like a Whopper Plopper. See, the other one has like a real wide, not that it matters, I don't think, but it has a real wide appearance with that spinner blade, whereas this one is a lot smaller. And this blade has that same curve, and I'm thinking it might have the same potential of making noise like the other Whopper Plopper. The problem is with this one is that this is kind of heavy and thick, and it makes my lure literally in the water just stand straight up. So I don't know how to get this thing to straighten out, and being so small, I don't know what else I can do to counter that weight, you know, to make it to where it'll sit at least like this. And when I pull it through the water, this thing's so heavy that and it's a singular tail, so it has a tendency to make the lure lobe, and it causes the lure to kind of flop over, you know, as it goes through the water. So I've recreated this tail the best of my ability with aluminum. So I might change this out and try an aluminum tail. But the problem with the aluminum, I've noticed when I'm working with that, is it bends and folds real easy. So a couple of casts, a couple of snags in a tree, one or two fish, and I could see that tail being problematic. So I don't know if this is ever going to really come through, but I love this design. This is off of an old-timey lure. And this thing right here was mounted on the front, and it had like a body behind it, and then it had a hook, and then I think it was intended to hook like the old pork rinds. And this thing was like a buzz bait with a pork rind trailer. But I saw this and I thought, well, this would be perfect for you know, a Whopper Plopper type lure. I think if I could achieve this body with this tail and actually get it to work, this would be exactly what I'm going for. That's the size differential that I want, you know, in this Whopper Plopper, smallest Whopper Plopper quest of mine. As far as the body goes, I think it presents much smaller, but as far as the overall length, it's really not that much shorter. but that's okay. I mean, if it does the trick, it casts on light spinning gear, ultralight gear, and I definitely think this would be a smallmouth killer. So anyway, the quest goes on, and I'm just having fun with it all. So if you guys have any tips, advice, or anybody has a idea of how to get this thing to work without spinning over the lure and having it float straighter, I mean, I know I could increase the body size, but yeah, I'm all ears. Thanks, man, and talk to you guys soon.